Hey everyone, welcome back. We're going to be talking all about Mitt Romney's new Patriot Pay. We're going to talk about, is it realistic, some of the pros and some of the cons. Here we go. I'm Logan.
Hey, I'm Edin.
So Edin, the new Patriot Pay, which came from Mitt Romney, which is the first Republican proposed act or bill during all this time of, putting out new stimulus packages, it talks about providing those frontline unsung heroes an extra $12 per hour bonus through May, June, and July. So that's the equivalent of potentially getting an additional $1,920 per person per month. And it's going to be towards not just healthcare workers, but also grocery stores, workers there, potentially, like truckers, all of those unsung heroes that we may not directly look at because we're focused on all the nurses and the doctors and all the healthcare workers. But in all reality, there's a lot of other industries that are really helping us get through this that really are not as discussed. So that is Mitt Romney's new Patriot Pay. Edin, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so those are, you brought up two things that are super surprising about this. The first, a Republican coming out with an idea to help frontline workers, which are usually on the lower end of the pay scale. So that's the first surprising thing, and I don't know if this is a political jab by Mitt Romney at Trump and the rest of the Republicans, or where this is coming from, but good for him for coming out and being supportive. The second piece of that that's surprising is how broad the concept of frontline workers is. Again, from a Republican to be that open at throwing money at different sectors, I guess, of the economy, from transportation drivers to the typical frontline workers to our grocery store clerks. And thinking about that, most people at the grocery store earn probably less than $12 an hour. Now we're going to add an extra $12 an hour to their pay. Is very significant. Do you have any details on how it's going to get funded? Because I know that's always a big issue with any proposal. How are we going to come up with the money for it?
So they haven't released anything like that. This is very, very new. I believe this came out on Friday. So the big thing with this that I can think of is there's two parts to it. And the first part is it's really helping out those that are putting everything on the line right now. I know we have the Heroes Fund, and the Heroes Fund is another stimulus package or act that would essentially give $25,000 to those healthcare workers, just overall added to their salary this year. And that's a good amount of money that's being put out there. So my question is one, is this a way to help out those that are really putting if you think about it, almost like their lives on the line to still go into work, because a grocery store is probably a hot spot for a lot of stuff going on. So it's one, is it a way to give back that maybe is easier to get past, because 25 grand per person versus 1,900 times 3, so 6 grand per person, maybe a little bit easier to actually have both sides agree and pass it. And the second part is, in my opinion, is going to be the fact that right now you're still getting, if you're unemployed, $600 per week from the federal government, which is on top of whatever the state is. So if you are unemployed and you're thinking, well, I don't really want to go back to work because I'm making more, I wonder if adding this onto it now encourages you, instead of just sitting there waiting for unemployment checks to come in, to actually get back to work because you are getting paid significantly more.
Yeah, that's, I think, definitely part of the consideration here, because you do have, essentially what it comes to is it's hazard pay, right? And we've seen it in different industries across times. You see it in the military, you do see it in the medical fields. If you do have some sort of hazardous occupation where you're dealing with, whether it's dangerous people or dangerous substances around you, that you get paid more. So it's I guess that concept. In terms of the dollar amounts, I do think it's a bridge between zero and that 25,000. because if you do the math, $12 an hour equates to roughly, call it 24 grand a year in income. So the 25 grand was for the full year, where this is limited down to, it sounds like 3 months. So it's literally a hazard pay for a limited duration, which I think is a lot more palatable with all the other programs that are going out there of saying, hey, look, let's do this temporarily. Let's make sure we take care of these people and make sure we cover a lot of people. What's interesting, you brought up unemployment. Unemployment right now, I know for a lot of people, is ending up being more income than having a job. So the disconnect is, the reason it's more is because the federal government is kicking in $600 a week. If we take that away, you will see a lot more people wanting to get back to work, because then it switches back the other way where working gets you more money. And unemployment's already, that federal program, I believe, is already limited in terms of the number of weeks that's going to be available. I can't remember off the top of my head when it's supposed to stop, but I thought it was a limited duration as well.
So with this, I mean, to me, it's either going to get people back earlier, or maybe it's like kind of a way to bridge it where maybe unemployment does, depending on when it does end, and then this kind of gets you back with, being okay with the circumstances, and then now you're back to full time. And I know a lot of these industries, like truckers, for example, right? Nobody's really talking about the trucking industry. However, a lot of these truck stops are closed. They can't go in and shower and do all this stuff. But when you have an 18-wheeler, you can't just pull into a McDonald's drive-through and go grab food. So there's a lot of industries like that we may not consider the circumstances that we're in, that something like this would really help just kind of like get them through the next 3 months. Now, granted, we're already in May, so this is being, set up for May, June, and July. So I'd be curious if this is, how realistic this is, or if they would just do back pay. But it also could be, if you think about in the world of sales, negotiating is all about, you set a high anchor. So you come in with we're going to pay everyone 25 grand. And then when you actually concede a little bit and you go, fine, you don't have to pay the 25 grand. But what we do want is $12 per hour per person that is on the front line. So I wonder if it was almost like a bit of a negotiation where the first one comes out and then the second one comes back and they go, all right, great. If you don't want to pay the big money, that's fine, but let's at least go for the second one. And maybe it's that, the idea of a reciprocal concession where, because you took a little bit away, the other side says, fine, we're in. So I'd be curious to see what happens, if this one starts to gain some, clout behind it. And then also, because it is Republican backed with Mitt Romney, it's the first one, I believe, that actually came out from that side of the aisle.
Yeah, you brought up a lot of good points there, and it is, I think, more of a negotiation piece at this point, because I think you are seeing, especially on the Democratic side, you're seeing a lot of questions about how these programs have been implemented, who have they benefited. There's starting to be statistics coming out, who's actually getting the lion's share of the benefits. And so now you do have that negotiation back and forth about, okay, well, how do we cover more people who actually need it? And how do we implement it where it's also sustainable and reasonable? Because it is an election year and we do got to be mindful of November and how that shakes out for everybody involved.
Yeah, so there you go. That is your Mitt Romney's new Patriot Pay. And it is, just to recap it, and I don't think they've even come out with the exact industries and exactly who is going to qualify for this, but those that are putting themselves more on the front lines of things, it's healthcare workers, but then also, the transportation industries, grocery store workers, things like that, potentially up to a bonus of $12 per hour per employee for the months of May, June, and July, which would essentially put an extra $1,920 into their pocket. So we'll see what happens with this one, but first one coming from the Republican side, and we'll go from there. So, Dean, any final words?
No, I mean, everybody who's affected by this, always just write letters to your congressional representatives. And if you feel strongly about it, make sure that you bring it to their attention, make sure you support it.
Everyone, thank you very much. And if you are not already subscribed, where we continue to bring more breaking package information like this, hit the subscribe button and make sure that you don't miss out on any breaking news. See you guys.